The level of stupid that I just had to receive
You make a bad poll, you make a bad call, that's on you.
wants me to sit down, grovel on my knees, and be like, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Yamato."
That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro.
Some creators get away with almost anything because of the image they build. Pirate Software was one of them. The smartest guy in the room, the ex-Blizzard dev, the hacker with all the answers and zero patience for criticism. People believed the hype for years, until 2025 hit hard. His reputation crashed fast, over 500,000 subscribers gone, Twitch numbers down nearly 90%, and the downfall played out in public. Most people would slow down, reflect, maybe change something. Not Thor. Heading into 2026, it's still the same energy, same ego, same need to always be right, same habit of twisting stories to protect the brand.
Wants me to sit down, grovel on my knees, and be like, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Yamato. It was all my fault, the maid."
That's why people think the backlash never really ended. The first major crack showed in January 2025 during a World of Warcraft run. At a key moment, Thor refused to help his teammates, and months of progress got wiped because of that choice. Players called him out, but instead of owning any part of it, he pushed blame everywhere else.
But there's irrefutable evidence that you had a detrimental effect, a majorly damaging effect on Stop Killing Games because of your misinformation that you spread about it in 2 videos and across all your streams, and not once have you bothered to correct that.
Soon after, he got removed from the Only Tanks Guild. That drama alone wasn't career-ending, but it exposed a bigger issue. Critics started noticing he couldn't handle pushback in a normal way, and once people saw that pattern, every new controversy hit even harder. Then June 2025 made things worse over the Stop Killing Games movement. The campaign was simple: stop publishers from deleting games people already paid for. Most gaming creators backed it instantly because it was an easy consumer rights win. But Thor's response turned into another massive mess online. The Stop Killing Games movement was basically pro-player and anti-greedy publishers. Most creators saw it as an easy win. Pirate Software went the complete opposite direction and started attacking it hard. The problem wasn't just disagreement. Thor misunderstood the campaign at a basic level, then confidently trashed it anyway. His own fans watched him go after a movement the rest of gaming internet supported without hesitation. The backlash exploded fast. Big creators, including Charlie, called him out publicly. Subscribers started vanishing by the tens of thousands every single day. At that point, most people would pause, explain themselves, maybe admit they got parts wrong. Thor did the opposite. He doubled down, then doubled down again. Soon, he was claiming people were review bombing him and acting like he was the real victim.
It's a horrible gut direction. That's awful, dude. No, eat my entire. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This sucks. That's a really stupid. That's incredibly stupid. I think this is complete garbage. All of this can eat that. I dropped the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire.
That only made the situation worse. Then July 2025 brought another disaster. A YouTuber named Coding Jesus released a technical breakdown of Thor's coding skills. It wasn't some personal attack, just a detailed review of his actual work, and the conclusions were rough. That hit hard because Thor's whole online image depended on his credentials. For years, he leaned heavily on stories about being a government hacker and working at Blizzard whenever people questioned him.
Imagine removing all these comments. Would you, as a newly added game developer to his game project, have any idea that one is Shelly? You would have no idea. This would never ever be allowed in a production repository, and like I've been hinting, it's below what you'd expect of a bottom tier intern.
That reputation was the backbone of his authority online. Instead of calmly answering the criticism, he went after Coding Jesus personally and avoided the technical points completely. Once people noticed the critiques weren't getting answered, his expert image collapsed fast. Soon, worked at Blizzard turned into a joke all over gaming internet. The phrase that once gave Thor authority became a joke overnight, and that's the danger of building your whole brand around always being right. The second people check your work and spot cracks, the entire image starts falling apart. Thor's online persona depended on being the smartest guy in the room. Coding Jesus didn't destroy that image directly, he just exposed weak spots and the internet handled the rest. But the biggest disaster was still ahead. On July 5th, leaked screenshots showed a conversation between Thor and his moderator, Kronos. The messages allegedly suggested Thor boosted his own record-breaking Twitch hype train in April 2024 by gifting subs and bits to himself. If true, that's the kind of scandal that wrecks trust permanently online. Thor and Kronos denied everything immediately and claimed they were targets of harassment. But days later, another screenshot appeared showing the exact donation in question. At that point, the damage was brutal. The remaining trust from his audience basically vanished overnight. Looking at all these controversies together, one pattern keeps showing up. Thor never seems willing to admit when he's wrong. Instead, the response is always deflection, blame shifting, or changing the framing to protect the image. That mindset cost him a massive part of his audience in just months. Still, some loyal fans stayed, and honestly, there was still a path to rebuild things if he showed growth and learned from the backlash.
History for about 20 years. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment, then Amazon Game Studios, and now I own my own studio, Pirate Software, by the same name, which is an indie studio, and I've been here for about 8.
After laying low for a while, Thor returned in December 2025 with In December, a month-long event focused on promoting indie game developers and giving smaller games more exposure. On paper, In December sounded like a smart comeback move, supporting indie developers, giving smaller games attention, building goodwill with the community. It should have worked. But once the event started, people noticed problems immediately. There was no real website, no organized hub for the featured games, and developers had to contact Thor directly just to join. The entire setup revolved around him. That became the bigger criticism. Even while promoting indie creators, the spotlight never left Thor for a second. Everything had to happen on his platform, under his control, with him at the center of it all.
Really setting all to 0 with 8 lines. Those were set to 0 because it was ending the alarms. By setting them to 0, you're actually setting the alarm to off.
So what he's doing here is a classic example of deflection. He pretends the chatter asked, "Why do you set the alarms to 0?" instead of the question, which was, "Why don't you iterate over them in a for loop?" A for loop is a very basic coding construct. If you're iterating through a consecutive set of numbers, you definitely want to use that. It's the perfect scenario for.
And that same pattern led into his newest controversy. For years, Ashes of Creation was hyped as the future of MMOs. The project raised over $3.2 million, built a loyal community, and spent nearly a decade promising something huge. Then on February 1st, 2026, Intrepid Studios suddenly announced development was shutting down and the whole team was being laid off.
Our month of December, we're going to be doing an event. We're going to be calling it the Indecember Games Show. One of the things that I've seen with traditional game shows is they're usually quite short. It's usually just a day or a couple of hours. Those games don't get a lot of breathing room. It's usually just an ad that plays. So since I'm doing it over the entire month, we're going to be playing those games on stream. We're going to be talking to developers. We're going to be interacting with those communities. We're going to be really doing deep dive.
The backlash exploded instantly, and Thor got dragged into it hard because he had spent years publicly supporting the game. He streamed it constantly, defended it, and encouraged people to believe in the project. But here's where things got messy. Just 4 days before the shutdown announcement, Thor quietly stopped supporting the game with no explanation.
Also seen inside of the indie scene that money ends up being an issue for everybody. It's incredibly expensive for the indie shows to be able to show off their games, and it ends up being a huge barrier for them to be able to do this. So I'm doing it for free. We've got corporate sponsors, we've got some other types of sponsors that are in there, and we've got you guys as the viewers, so the indies aren't going to pay a dime. That's the whole point with it.
Then after the collapse became public, he released a statement saying he wasn't surprised the project failed. To a lot of people, that looked extremely shady. After years of support, suddenly acting like he saw the downfall coming all along made the timing look terrible. The next day, Thor uploaded a YouTube video claiming he stepped away because of moderation problems, not because he lost faith in the project. Thor claimed he stopped supporting Ashes of Creation because the community was filled with racist and hateful users, and according to him, the moderation team wasn't doing enough about it. To support the story, he showed a message from Intrepid's head of communications, Margaret Crone, as proof. At first, the explanation sounded believable, but by this stage, people already questioned almost everything Thor said online. Soon after the video dropped, Margaret publicly responded and said Thor had completely misrepresented the context of her message. That changed everything. A huge part of the community instantly sided with her because of Thor's recent history with controversy. Trying to prove he was right, Thor then released the full screenshots of their conversation, expecting it to clear his name once and for all. Instead, it completely backfired. The screenshots didn't support his claims at all. In public, Thor framed the issue like he was standing up against racism and protecting the community. But the messages mostly showed him reporting people for mocking him personally, mentioning his Kiwi Farms page, and making jokes at his expense. That became the real scandal.
Sending them stuff back and forth with this, and I was like, hey, we got a serious moderation problem on the server. And we started linking them things. There was a guy that was actually posting comments about Jewish people every day, all day, right? He was just doing that every single day, all day. And the account would just change every single day. Guy never got banned. We had a guy that was saying that he wanted to form a group to go kill all the LGBT people on the server. We got a screenshot of that, sent it up to them. Guy never got banned.
Thor repeatedly pushed Intrepid's moderation team to punish those users faster. Margaret responded professionally, explaining that not every report leads to a permanent ban and that some situations only receive warnings or temporary actions. She also explained their moderation team was small and handling a backlog. Most people saw that as a fair response. Thor didn't. He escalated things further by claiming some of the users he reported were connected to multiple swatting incidents against him. And to be clear, swatting is serious and dangerous. Nobody should go through that. But as Margaret pointed out, a game moderation team doesn't actually have control over criminal investigations or real-world harassment cases. Margaret explained something pretty simple. Game moderators handle behavior inside the game, not real-world crimes. They aren't law enforcement, and they can't investigate swatting cases outside their platform. It was a calm and reasonable response. But Thor expected instant action. On his own streams, people get banned fast for joking about him, and he seemed to expect that same level of moderation everywhere else. When Intrepid didn't react the way he wanted, he sent a long message threatening to quit the game and stop streaming it entirely. Even then, Margaret stayed professional. She explained the reported messages happened in a short 15-minute period and involved only a few users. Some comments crossed lines, but under their moderation system, first-time offenses usually didn't lead straight to permanent bans. Honestly, that's standard moderation policy almost everywhere online. She also pointed out there was no realistic way to prove those game accounts were connected to the swatting incidents Thor mentioned in real life. The moment Thor released the screenshots publicly, people noticed two things immediately. First, the conversation looked very different from how he originally described it. Second, he came across like someone unwilling to accept any response unless it was complete agreement and instant compliance. That backlash spread fast, and after controversy, a lot of people started questioning whether Pirate Software could ever fully rebuild his reputation online again. The frustrating part is that almost every situation had an easy fix. Admit mistakes, communicate clearly, and stop turning every disagreement into a public war. Almost every controversy had the same simple solution: admit fault and show some humility. That's it. But every single time, Thor chose ego instead, and that's what made the downfall so difficult to watch. Nobody took down Pirate Software. There wasn't some secret campaign or massive conspiracy against him. Most of the damage came from his own reactions, one bad decision after another, all packed into a single year. Every controversy gave him an exit ramp, a chance to calm things down, rebuild trust, and move forward. Instead, he kept doubling down, avoiding accountability, and turning smaller problems into full disasters. One comment from the community summed it up perfectly. If he could admit he was wrong once in a while, none of this would have mattered. That's the danger of building a brand around always being right. The second people stop believing the image, everything underneath starts collapsing fast because there's nothing left to support it. At this point, the big question is whether Pirate Software can actually recover from all this, or if the damage is permanent. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Catch you in the next one.